My name is Grace. I'm 29. Today, Chicago's notorious gray clouds seem to descend solely for me, heavy and oppressive, as though they carried a personal grudge. I work as an accountant at a private medical clinic. Numbers have always been kind to me. Income, expenses, balance sheets. They deliver clear, final answers. 2 plus 2 equals 4. No ambiguity. Yet the arithmetic of life, I've discovered, follows none of those tidy rules, especially when your heart aches with the longing to become a mother. My hands shook as I sat on the frigid metal chair in the hospital waiting room. The biting antiseptic odor turned my stomach. Beside me, a young woman cradled a baby wrapped in soft pink. The infant slept peacefully while she caressed its cheek with a tenderness that regarded the child as the world's most priceless possession. I turned my gaze away. In that instant, I would have traded every possession I owned to trade places with her, to know that bone-deep fatigue, those sleepless nights, anything so my arms would no longer be empty. I yearned for our home's suffocating silence to be shattered by a baby's cry. I've been married to Mark for 4 years. He's a real estate agent, industrious, charming, universally liked, or so I believed. We've been trying for 2. Each month brought fresh disappointment, followed by the quiet tears I wept in the bathroom with the faucet running to mask the sound. Mark always reassured me. "We have time, Grace. Don't rush." But I was exhausted by waiting. Today, I had come for a conclusive answer. Mark wasn't with me. This morning, as he left, he'd said, "I've got a major closing, honey. I can't miss this one. You'll be fine." Then pressed a quick kiss to my cheek. The loneliness that followed settled in my chest like a stone. "Grace," the nurse called. I started, rose. My legs felt unsteady as I moved toward Dr. Peterson's office. He was an old family friend, a gentle, fatherly physician, but when I opened the door, his familiar warmth was absent. He sat behind his desk, glasses low on his nose, staring at the files before him. The look he gave me held less of a doctor greeting a patient and more of a man weighed down with guilt. "Sit down, my dear," he said. His voice was strained. I sat, clutching my purse tightly against my lap. "How are the results, Dr. Peterson?" My words emerged frailer than intended. "Is there any hope?" He drew a deep breath, removed his glasses, and set them aside. He avoided my eyes, fixing his stare on a painting across the room. "Grace," he began slowly, "I've reviewed your tests repeatedly. Hormone levels, ultrasound images. Medically, nothing stands in the way of you becoming a mother. Everything appears normal." A spark of hope flared inside me. "So there's no problem? We can keep trying?" He shook his head. His shoulders sagged. "The problem isn't with you, my dear, but medicine can mend the body. It cannot repair every equation life writes." I didn't grasp his meaning. "Is it Mark? Is something wrong with his tests?" He'd always delayed getting checked, insisting it wasn't necessary. The doctor went quiet. He toyed nervously with a pen on his desk. A thick, airless silence filled the space. Beads of perspiration appeared on his brow. He seemed caught between duty and conscience, searching for words that refused to come. Abruptly, he pushed his chair back and stood. "My throat is parched," he said, voice unsteady. "I'm going to fetch some water and hand a file to the nurse. I'll be gone 2 minutes." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, back toward me. "My computer screen is still on. Old age, I suppose. I forget to shut it down sometimes. You're an accountant. You read numbers and lists well. You might want to glance at it while I'm gone." He slipped out and closed the door gently behind him. I was alone. My pulse thundered in my ears. What had he meant? Why leave me with his computer? Curiosity overpowered fear. I rose slowly, legs trembling, drawn to the desk by an unseen current. I stepped around it, stood before the black leather chair. The bright screen illuminated my face. The hospital's patient portal remained open. My eyes skimmed rows of medical jargon, dates, codes, until one name froze me in place. Chloe Miller. My breath snagged. That name was no stranger. Mark's ex-fiancée, the woman he told me had perished in a terrible car accident 5 years earlier, the one whose memory still darkened certain anniversaries, the one he sometimes wept for in his sleep, murmuring, "I couldn't protect her." Yet here she was in today's records. My gaze slid further. The air vanished from the room. Status, pregnancy follow-up 29th week. Spouse, Mark Miller. Same last name as mine. Contact, Mark's cell. My husband's number. I gripped the desk to keep from falling. The world tilted. Bile burned up my throat. Chloe Miller was alive. Chloe Miller was pregnant. And the father was my husband. My mind rejected the truth. "No," I whispered to the empty room. "She's dead. Mark cried. He told me." I reached for the mouse, desperate for a mistaken identity, yet I knew that phone number by heart. It belonged to the man who had kissed me goodbye that morning, citing a big closing. Further details: last visit yesterday. Doctor's note: father-to-be wishes to attend the delivery. Fetal development normal. While I sat in this sterile room, grieving my empty arms, my husband had been sharing the joy of a growing life with the woman he claimed was gone forever. His endless work hours, out-of-town trips, late-night meetings, every excuse had been a lie. The pillow we shared, the table where we ate, the future I'd imagined, all constructed on an enormous deception. Tears spilled, but not from sorrow. This time, they came from a white-hot rage that scorched through me. When the doorknob turned, I jerked back, returned to my chair. Dr. Peterson entered. He avoided my gaze, sat, and switched off the monitor. "Water cooler's broken," he muttered, voice still tight. Then he looked up and saw the ruin in my eyes. He knew I had seen. "Grace," he said quietly, "sometimes life at least not yet. First, I needed to confront the truth in all its brutal nakedness." My steps quickened as I strolled toward the parking lot. Where was she? This woman Mark swore had died. That belly, that baby. I opened the car door and slid into the driver's seat. In the rearview mirror, I met my own gaze. The woman who once carried pure, aching longing for a child had vanished. In her place stood someone angry, already rising from the ashes of betrayal. I turned the key. As the engine growled to life, I made my decision. I wasn't going home. I wouldn't call Mark and demand answers. Not yet. First, I would find Chloe Miller. I would see with my own eyes the second life my husband had so carefully constructed. This story wasn't ending here. In truth, it was only beginning. If you still trust the person closest to you, listen carefully to what I lived through, because sometimes the truth strikes harder than the darkest nightmare. After leaving the hospital, I drove aimlessly across Chicago's gray asphalt, no destination in mind. I switched off the radio. I wanted no sound except the steady drone of the engine. Only Mark's voice echoed inside my skull, that trembling, perfectly rehearsed tone of grief. For 4 full years, I had lived in the shadow of a ghost that had never truly existed. When I stopped at a red light, my eyes drifted to the empty passenger seat. I remembered the night Mark sat there and recounted the accident as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. "It was raining, Grace," he had said, head in his hands, voice breaking. "Just like tonight. Visibility was nothing. By the time I saw the truck's lights, it was too late. I swerved. Chloe's scream still rings in my ears. I couldn't get her out. The flames, those flames consumed my life too." That night, I had held him while he sobbed against my chest. Stroking his hair, I had thought, what a devoted man. How deeply he still loves the woman he lost. I had comforted my own husband as he mourned his ex-fiancée. How blind I had been. Those tears, those shudders, those meticulously detailed memories, all of it had been theater. By the time I reached home, dusk had settled. Our pretty Lincoln Park apartment looked, from the outside, like a haven of tranquility. Geraniums bloomed on the balcony, lace curtains glowed softly behind the windows. Everything appeared so normal, so perfect, it turned my stomach. My hand shook as I slid the key into the lock. That familiar click no longer felt like opening my home. It felt like unlatching a chest full of lies. Inside, the house was silent. Mark's beige trench coat hung neatly on the rack beside my umbrella. They looked so perfectly matched, just like we were supposed to be. Such a lovely couple, the neighbors always said. Mark's such a gentleman. Grace is such a lady. No one knew about the chill behind these walls, my desperate longing for a child, or Mark's rehearsed mourning. I walked into the bedroom. Our bed was immaculately made. Mark always insisted on order. He had organized his life the same way. One drawer for me, the dutiful, patient, child-longing wife. Another drawer for Chloe, the passionate, once lost, now pregnant other wife. Those drawers never touched. I opened the nightstand drawer. Mark's watches, cufflinks, and at the very back, that small wooden box, always unlocked, always treated as sacred. The only thing left of Chloe, he had told me, eyes glistening. A necklace pendant I pulled from the ashes. I lifted the box and opened the lid. Inside lay a tarnished silver butterfly pendant. For years I had gazed at it and pitied a young woman stolen too soon. Now, examining it closely, I noticed the tiny stamp on the back, a brand mark from a cheap costume jewelry chain that only became popular last year. This piece could never have survived a fire 5 years ago. The burn marks had clearly been scorched on recently, probably with a lighter in a clumsy attempt to age it. I closed my fist around the metal. It warmed against my skin. This cheap trinket summed up Mark's entire fabrication. The grief he displayed had been nothing more than a piece of mall jewelry with a few hasty scorch marks. In that instant, every moment of our marriage flickered before me. The way his face darkened whenever I mentioned children, his soft, anguished refrain, "I can't face the fear of losing again, Grace. What if something happens to our baby?" His fear wasn't about loss. His fear was about juggling 2 families at once. He already had a child on the way. Perhaps Chloe's pregnancy was planned from the start, and he used the trauma card to keep my own hopes quiet. I stepped into the bathroom and faced the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes hollow. I had been carrying this marriage, mourning, compromising, adjusting, yet the person I mourned never died. My gaze dropped to the toothbrushes, his blue, mine pink, standing innocently side by side. I reached out quickly, seized Mark's brush, and hurled it into the trash with sudden fury. That small, petty act sent a strange surge of power through me. I would no longer play the victim in this house. Back in the living room, I sank on the couch. Outside, it was fully dark, but I left the lights off. Mark would be home soon. He'd slip on that weary, self-sacrificing husband mask again. "I'm so tired, Grace. The market's dead," he'd say. Perhaps he would come straight from Chloe's side, still carrying the faint scent of her home, of her belly, of their baby. I reached for my purse. In my mind, I repeated the number I had seen on Dr. Peterson's screen. Mark didn't have Chloe saved in his contacts, but I remembered Ken the plumber, the man he called often, those late-night balcony calls. "KK has got another burst pipe on a job site." I took out my phone. I could dial that number right now and confirm everything. But no, not yet. I wanted to watch his face when he walked through that door. I wanted to see the ugliness beneath the mask he had worn for years. Then I heard the key in the lock. My heart slammed against my ribs. That familiar metallic click no longer meant homecoming. It sounded the beginning of war. I took a slow, steady breath. I arranged my face into the same practiced calm Mark had used on me for years. Only this time, the expression held no warmth, only ice. The door swung open. The yellow light from the living room chandelier struck my eyes like a blade. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, keys dangling from his fingers. That same familiar mask was already in place. Tired yet tender, the devoted husband returning home. His lips parted. He spoke. I couldn't hear the words. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears, and one searing image dominated every corner of my mind: the cold blue glow of the hospital monitor. Patient, Chloe Miller. Gestational age, 29 weeks. Spouse, Mark. Those lines looped endlessly behind my eyes, drowning out everything else, including Mark's gentle, "Grace, are you okay, honey?" Shock had turned my body to stone. My fingertips buzzed with pins and needles. The man standing before me was the one whose scent still clung to my pillow, whose coffee I brewed every morning, whose arms I had trusted for 4 years. He was also the legal spouse of a woman 7 months pregnant. He slipped off his shoes and crossed the carpet toward me. Each muffled step felt like another crack spreading through my chest. When he sat beside me, the cushion dipped under his weight, and with it, the last fragile supports of my world gave way. "You're white as a ghost," he murmured, lifting a hand toward my forehead. "Are you ill?" I wanted to slap that hand away. I wanted to scream until the window shattered. "Do you have another wife? Another life? Another baby on the way?" But my tongue lay thick and useless against the roof of my mouth. All I could do was stare at him, empty, unblinking. My head gave the smallest nod. My voice, when it finally scraped out, sounded like broken glass. "It hurts. A lot." The concern that flooded Mark's face was so perfectly performed that for one dizzy second I questioned my own memory. Had I misread the screen? A name coincidence? But no, the phone number was unmistakable. It belonged to the device now resting in his pocket, and that word, spouse, was not casual. It carried weight, paperwork, commitment. This wasn't a fling. This was a second, parallel marriage. "Did you go to the doctor today?" he asked, shrugging off his jacket. His tone stayed light, but I caught the brief, sharp glint of alarm in his eyes. I never broke eye contact. I went. His fingers paused mid-button on his shirt. He inhaled, held it. "What did Dr. Peterson say?" Watching him calculate, watching him fish for whether his secret had cracked open, turned my stomach. "Negative," I said, voice flat and glacial. "Again, we're not having a child." His shoulders dropped like strings cut. The breath he'd been holding escaped in a soft rush of relief. He couldn't quite hide the flicker of gratitude that crossed his face before he layered on sorrow. "It's for the best, my love," he said, voice thickening with rehearsed sadness. "It just means it's not our time. We're enough for each other, aren't we? We're enough." We. He had already gutted that word and built another we behind my back. In that instant, every morning recital replayed in my head like a looped film reel. The cemetery visits, the annual anniversaries of grief, the mumbled nightmares, the tears I had wiped away while he mourned a woman who was very much alive and carrying his child. I rose on unsteady legs. Sharing oxygen with him felt like breathing poison. "I'm going to bed." "Aren't you eating? You must be starving," he called after me. I didn't answer. I shut the bedroom door behind me, leaned my weight against it, and slid to the floor. In the darkness, the screen glowed again behind my eyelids. Chloe Miller, 29 weeks. 7 months. For 7 months, while Mark lay beside me pretending to share my longing for a baby, he had been choosing paint colors, folding tiny clothes, listening to heartbeats somewhere else. What had gone through his mind while he watched me cry each month? Pity? Amusement? Convenience? I pressed my palm over my mouth to trap the sob. No, I would not cry. Not one more tear for this man. Not one more tear for this fiction. Shock was cooling, hardening into something sharper, something cold and precise. I pulled out my phone. The screen's light carved harsh shadows across my face. My shaking fingers tapped the name. Chloe Miller, Chicago. Thousands of results. I narrowed it. I remembered the grocery receipt I'd once found crumpled in his coat pocket. La Speranza Market, Pilsen. I opened maps, zoomed to the streets surrounding that store. Narrow blocks, row houses pressed shoulder to shoulder. Somewhere in that modest grid, a heavily pregnant woman was waiting for her husband to come home from work. Did she know he was married? Or had he fed her the same polished lies he fed me? Divorced, frequent travel, complicated past. I dragged my pillow to the edge of the bed and sat staring at his. How did he sleep on it? How did he carry two wives, two futures, two entirely separate realities without the weight crushing him? The doorknob turned, slowly, carefully. It wasn't locked, but he didn't enter. "Grace," his whisper came through the wood. "Do you need anything?" I stayed silent. Let him think I was already asleep. Let him taste the same quiet deception he had forced on me. "Good night," he said at last. Footsteps retreated. Moments later, the low murmur of the television drifted from the living room. Routine. Normalcy. The performance continued. But for me, normal had died the instant I left Dr. Peterson's office. The word spouse on that screen was my marriage's death certificate. I would wait for morning. When daylight came, I would drive to Pilsen. I would walk those streets block by block. If I had to knock on every door, I would find Chloe Miller. "Have a good one," I said, sliding the bills across the counter. "I'm looking for someone who lives around here. Maybe you know him. Mark, the real estate agent." The man paused, fingers hovering over the register drawer. He peered at me over the top of his glasses. "Which Mark? You mean Mark from the yellow building?" "Yes," I replied, seizing the guess like a lifeline. "His wife's pregnant, I think." The storekeeper's face brightened with recognition. "Oh, that Mark. Sure, Chloe's husband." He jerked his thumb toward the street. "They're in the yellow apartment building right across, 3rd floor." He leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "He's a real gentleman, that one. The poor guy's been through hell." I frowned, feigning polite curiosity. "Oh? Why's that?" The man shook his head, lips pursing in sympathy. "His ex-wife put him through the ringer, lady, made his life miserable. He fought tooth and nail for that divorce. Thank God he's happy now with Chloe. Baby on the way, they're over the moon." The words landed like bricks against my ribs. My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. So that was the story he had sold her. I wasn't merely absent. I was the villain, the toxic ex who had tormented him, the nightmare he had finally escaped. Mark hadn't simply hidden Chloe from me. He had rewritten me into a monster for her. "Thank you," I managed, voice thin. I took the water bottle and forced my legs to carry me outside. The air hit my face, but the fire inside only roared higher. I stared at the yellow building. On the 3rd floor balcony, laundry fluttered in the breeze. Tiny onesies, miniature socks, miniature baby clothes dancing like innocent flags. Then the balcony door slid open. She stepped out. Chloe, the woman from the hidden photos. Dark hair swept into a loose, messy bun, a flowing maternity dress draped over her rounded belly. She pressed one hand to her lower back, bent slowly, and lifted a garment from the laundry basket to pin it on the line. Her face carried the unmistakable weariness of late pregnancy, yet there was a quiet peace in her expression. Seeing her in the flesh was a physical blow. She wasn't a phantom or a rival. She was another woman living a life built on the same lies I had swallowed. I retreated to the car. What now? March up there and shout, "I'm his real wife." She was 7 months pregnant. The shock could make her faint. Something could happen to the baby. Mark would twist it, paint me as the unstable, vengeful ex who endangered an innocent child. No, I had to be smarter. I needed to step inside that life. I needed to touch the evidence of his deception with my own hands. My gaze fell on the work bag in the back seat. Company brochures, survey forms, blank questionnaires. A bitter smile tugged at my mouth. I slipped on the horn-rimmed glasses. I grabbed the notebook. Then I crossed to the small baby boutique 2 doors down and bought the softest textured baby blanket displayed in the window and had it wrapped in pale blue paper with a silver bow. I was no longer Grace. I was Emily, market researcher for a premium baby products brand. I drew a steadying breath, stepped out of the car, and crossed the street. The yellow building smelled of damp plaster and yesterday's fried onions. Each stair creaked under my weight. First floor, second, third. I stopped before the brown steel door. The doormat read, "Welcome," in cheerful script. The irony burned. I pressed the bell. Slippers shuffled inside. A shadow passed across the peephole. The lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Chloe stood there, younger and softer in person, eyes slightly puffy from fatigue or sleep, yet kind. Surprise flickered across her face. "Yes?" she asked, gently. I cleared my throat and summoned my most polished professional smile. "Hello, sorry to disturb you. I'm with a baby products company. We're doing market research with expectant mothers in the neighborhood. Participants receive a small thank you gift." I lifted the wrapped package just enough to catch the light. Her wariness melted instantly. An eager smile bloomed. One hand drifted unconsciously to her belly. "Oh, really? That's so sweet." "We only have a few quick questions," I continued, hoping she would invite me in. "You can answer right here at the door if that's easier." Chloe laughed softly and pulled the door wide. No, don't be silly. Come in. I was just about to make herbal tea. I've been talking to the walls all morning from the loneliness. My husband's at work." The words "my husband" struck like a fist to the diaphragm. My husband. Her husband. I crossed the threshold. My pulse thundered so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I slipped off my shoes. There, on the coat rack, hung the familiar beige trench coat, identical to the one in our Lincoln Park closet. He had bought two, one for each life. The precision of it made my stomach turn. "Welcome," Chloe said warmly, offering her hand. "I'm Chloe." I shook it. Her palm was warm, trusting. "Pleased to meet you," I replied, meeting her eyes without a tremor. "I'm Emily." "Please, come into the living room," she said, gesturing down the short hallway. The carpet beneath my bare feet felt eerily similar to the one at home. And it wasn't just the flooring. The living room layout mirrored ours almost exactly. Sofa placement, TV angle, even the side table lamp. Mark's meticulous taste had duplicated itself down to the smallest detail. This wasn't a temporary hideaway. This was his second home. My gaze swept the walls, the shelves, then froze on the framed photos lined across the television stand. My breath snagged. In the largest frame, Mark and Chloe beamed at the camera, heads tilted close together. Behind them stretched a brilliant turquoise sea. He wore the blue linen shirt I had folded and packed into the suitcase last. I opened the cover. On the first page, in careful, looping handwriting, "To my darling husband, my hero Mark. Forever, Chloe." Love. The word seared my fingertips as I snapped the book shut and set it back exactly as I'd found it. My gaze shifted. Draped casually over the armchair was the gray cardigan. My gray cardigan. The one I had given Mark 2 Christmases ago, wrapped in silver paper. A week later, he'd sighed dramatically. "I must have left it at the office. Can't find it anywhere. Maybe the cleaning crew took it." I had believed him. Now that same cardigan rested here, soft folds carrying the faint scent of Chloe's perfume instead of mine. Chloe returned with a small tray. The gentle clink of glasses against porcelain cut through the silence. She set a steaming mug in front of me and settled into the armchair opposite, right beside the cardigan that belonged to the man we both called husband. "What does your husband do?" I asked, flipping open my notebook, pen poised, eyes never leaving her face. "He's a real estate agent," she answered, pride warming her voice. "He works so hard, day and night, always on the move. Sometimes he has out-of-town closings that keep him away for days, but it's okay. He's doing it all for us, for our baby's future." The days he told me were business trips, the evenings he claimed were late showings. He had spent them here, drinking this same herbal tea, sitting on this couch, building a life while I waited in the dark. "Isn't it difficult?" I pressed, pressing the pen harder against the paper.
Being alone so much during pregnancy? Chloe sighed, a shadow crossing her features. Of course it's hard, but I have to support him. After everything he endured with his ex-wife, I want him to finally have peace. The pen froze mid-word. His ex-wife? I echoed, voice flat. Yes, Chloe said, lowering her tone as though sharing something fragile. She wore him down. She had issues, psychological problems, became completely obsessed with him. The divorce was brutal. She kept causing trouble, making threats. Mark still gets nervous sometimes that she'll track him down. That's why we keep our address private, just to be safe. Ice spread through my veins. I was listening to the story Mark had written about me, the obsessive, unstable ex, the stalker, the threat. While I had spent 4 years trying to be his safe harbor, his confidant, his partner, he had recast me as the villain in someone else's life. He hadn't merely betrayed me, he erased who I was and replaced it with a monster to protect his secret. I see, was all I managed. The words came out brittle and cold. Chloe mistook it for professional detachment. So, how are the nursery preparations coming along? Our research includes nursery preferences. Oh, that's my favorite room. Her face brightened instantly. She rose with careful effort. Come, I'll show you. We walked down the short hallway. When she opened the door, the scent of fresh paint and new wood enveloped me. The room could have been photographed for a catalog. Pale blue walls, white crib by the window, a delicate mobile of clouds and stars turning slowly above it. But the rocking chair in the corner stopped my heart. Last month, I'd questioned the large charge on Mark's credit card statement. New waiting chairs for the office, he'd explained smoothly, for client comfort. Not for the office, for Chloe, so she could sit comfortably while feeding their child. I drifted toward the crib. A soft blanket lay neatly folded inside. Chloe joined me, resting her palm on the rail. His daddy assembled the crib himself, she said, smiling. He spent hours on it. If even one screw was missing, he'd turn the house upside down. He wants everything perfect for his son. The man who told me it's not meant to be after every negative test. The man too helpless to fix a dripping faucet at home. Here he had become a devoted carpenter for his son. The closet door stood slightly ajar. Inside, tiny onesies hung in perfect rows. On the bottom shelf sat a pair of navy blue plaid men's slippers, the exact pattern Mark wore every evening in our Lincoln Park bedroom. The betrayal was no longer merely emotional. It was architectural, systematic. 2 trench coats, 2 pairs of slippers, 2 homes, 2 wives. He wasn't a visitor here. This was his real home. Chloe was his real wife. The baby was his real son. And I was the secret he maintained on the other side of the city. Above the crib, wooden letters spelled a name on the wall. L-E-O. Leo. He had taken the name we once whispered about in the dark and given it to this child. Could I have some water? My voice cracked. Nausea surged. Of course, I'll be right back. She left the room. Alone in the nursery, surrounded by Mark's handiwork, the crib he built, the chair he bought, the life he chose, I felt his presence like a physical weight behind me, breathing, watching. This man wasn't just a liar. He was a thief of years, of dreams, of motherhood itself. Chloe returned with the glass. I drank it in one long swallow. Thank you so much, I said, setting it down. I should be going. You've been wonderful, she replied sincerely, walking me to the door. Come back after the birth. You can meet baby Leo. The invitation pierced like the final twist of a knife. In the entryway, I gave one last glance at the beige trench coat hanging on the rack. The same coat that hung in my home. The same man wearing 2 skins. Outside, my legs barely held me to the car. When I closed the door and collapsed against the steering wheel, no tears came. They were finished. In their place burned a cold, surgical certainty. Mark would come home tonight wearing his weary husband mask, but this time he would not find the trusting, hopeful Chloe stared at the photo, She squinted, leaning closer, tracing the details with her eyes. Mark's suit, my dress, the way our arms encircled each other so naturally. Then her gaze dropped to the red certificate lying between us on the table. Her hand shook as she reached for it. She opened the folder. Our names stared back at her, Grace and Mark, followed by the dates of our marriage. No divorce decree, no separation. The remaining pages were blank, pristine, final. Outside, rain began tapping against the window, soft at first, then steady. Chloe didn't scream. She didn't lunge or accuse. She simply froze. The color bled entirely from her face until her lips took on a faint bluish tint. The certificate slipped from her fingers and landed in her lap like a dead weight. "He promised me," she whispered. Her voice was thread thin. Her eyes remained locked on the honeymoon photo hanging on the wall, the one where they looked so blissfully complete. "He said that woman was a nightmare from his past. He swore on our baby." Tears slid down her cheeks in perfect silence. No sobs, just quiet, unstoppable streams. I watched the moment her entire world cracked open and collapsed inward, every certainty dissolving into ash. "I'm sorry," I said, the words rough in my throat. "You deserved to know who the father of your child really is, what kind of man he truly is." Chloe gave no reply. Then her expression twisted. Her hands flew to her abdomen. A sharp, strangled sound escaped her. "Chloe," I started, half rising. She doubled over, fingers digging into the fabric of her dress, as though trying to hold herself together. Sweat beaded instantly on her forehead. Her breathing turned ragged. "I'm having contractions," she gasped through clenched teeth. "It hurts like a knife." I moved to her side, grasping her arm. "Okay, breathe, slow breaths." But she couldn't. The shock, the grief, the betrayal, it had ignited something inside her body that refused to wait. "Water," she moaned. Her eyes widened in fresh terror. "My water broke." I looked down. A dark stain was spreading across the cushion of the armchair, soaking into the carpet beside the gray cardigan. She was only 29 weeks. Too early, far too early. "No, no, not now," Chloe stammered, panic rising. "He's too small. He won't make it. Grace, help me." The woman who moments ago believed I was a dangerous, obsessive stalker was now clutching at me, pleading. In that instant, the labels evaporated. I was no longer the betrayed wife. She was no longer the other woman. We were simply two people caught in the same storm, one in agony, one trying to keep her from drowning. "Don't be afraid," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice, even as my own hands trembled. "I'm calling an ambulance. We're getting you to the hospital right now. Nothing is going to happen to your baby." Chloe slumped sideways onto the couch. Her breaths came in shallow, frantic bursts. Her eyes began to flutter, rolling. I squeezed her icy hand. "Don't leave me," she whispered, nails biting into my palm. "Don't you dare call him. Just you. Stay." His name flared fresh rage inside me, but I swallowed it. Not now. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm not going anywhere." When the ambulance siren finally cut through the rain at the end of the street, Chloe was teetering on the edge of consciousness. Mark's carefully constructed world was disintegrating in this living room, amid labor pains, falling rain, and wailing sirens. Whether any of us would emerge from the wreckage, and above all, what would become of the fragile life named Leo, would be decided in the hours ahead. Inside the ambulance, the siren throbbed against my skull. Chloe lay on the stretcher, gripping my hand with bruising force through each contraction. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead. Her eyes were wide pools of fear. In that narrow, swaying space, the tangled mess of betrayal and lies simply vanished. She was no longer the other woman. I was no longer the cheated wife. I was only the person holding her hand while she fought to bring her child into the world. "Hold on, Chloe," I said, raising my voice over the wail. "We're almost there, almost at the hospital." She shook her head weakly. Her lips quivered. "It's too early. If something happens to him, I can't live, Grace. If something happens to my son." Her son. Mark's son. The child I had longed for, wept for, begged for in silent bathrooms month after month. The irony was vicious. Here I was, steadying the woman who carried the baby I could never have. Yet when I looked into her terrified eyes, jealousy dissolved into something heavier, like duty. I could not allow Mark's sins to claim her life or her child's. The ambulance lurched to a stop at the emergency entrance. Doors flew open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sharp antiseptic scent of the hospital. Paramedics lowered the stretcher with practiced speed. I hurried after them, breathless. Inside the automatic doors, a nurse blocked our path, clipboard in hand. "Are you family?" I hesitated. What was I? The legal wife of the man who deceived us both? The bearer of the news that had triggered this crisis? Chloe's hand reached weakly toward me from the stretcher. Her eyes begged, "Don't leave me alone." "I'm her sister," I said. The lie came easily now, the easiest thing I had spoken in days. "I'm staying with her." The nurse nodded briskly. "We're taking her straight to OR. High-risk premature labor. The baby's in distress. Wait here." They wheeled Chloe through the double doors at the end of the corridor. The panels swung shut.
"Welcome, little stranger," I whispered to the glass. Just then, soft wheels rolled behind me. I turned. A nurse was guiding Chloe's wheelchair down the corridor. Chloe looked drained, her face as pale as fresh linen, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but they were open, alert. When she saw me, she lifted a weak hand. The nurse paused. Chloe's gaze went straight to the incubator. The moment it landed on her tiny son, her shoulders began to tremble. She pressed her palm to her mouth. A quiet, broken sob slipped out. "He's so small," she breathed. "Grace, he's so small." I knelt beside the chair and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. "He's alive, Chloe," I said, holding her eyes. "The doctor said he's a fighter. He's holding on." She shifted her stare from the baby to me. Gratitude and shame swirled in her expression. "Why didn't you leave?" she asked softly. "Why are you still here, after everything? I'm your husband's—" "Stop." My voice was firm, but not harsh. "We can't undo what's done. You were deceived. So was I. But that child in there," I nodded toward the glass, "he needs us. Right now, that's the only thing that matters." Chloe nodded once. Her grip tightened on my hand. "Mark," her voice quivered. "If Mark comes—" "He will come," I said, the chill in my tone making her shiver. "But when he does, he won't find two broken women he can manipulate. For that baby to live, those lies have to die, and we will make him answer for them." I rose and gave the incubator one last look. The fractured pieces inside me had somehow fused again, stronger, sharper. I had to be unbreakable now, not only for my own wounds, for the fragile breath fighting behind that glass. When Mark walked into this hospital, he would face the reckoning he never imagined, because the two women he had shattered had risen from the ruins, and they were standing together. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, grating against my raw nerves like a bow drawn too hard across strings. Chloe sat wrapped in the thin hospital blanket I had tucked around her shoulders. Her swollen eyes stayed fixed on the frosted glass of the NICU. I stood half hidden behind a pillar, back pressed to the cold tile wall, arms folded, waiting, patient, ready. Chloe's phone vibrated in her lap. Silent, but the buzz echoed in the quiet corridor. The screen lit her pale face. "He's calling," she whispered. "Answer it," I said evenly. "Tell him you're at the hospital. Give him the floor. Then hang up. Don't mention me." Her finger trembled as she accepted the call and lifted the phone. "Hello, Mark." Her voice cracked. Raw, genuine. No acting required. "I'm at the hospital. My water broke. Yes. He was born. He's so small. Please come." She ended the call without waiting for more. Her eyes met mine.
fear and fury tangled together. "He's coming," she said. He sounded panicked. "His panic isn't for us, Chloe," I replied, stepping closer and resting a hand on her shoulder. "It's for the world he built starting to crack. But don't worry, we're about to shatter it completely." Time stretched thin. Every elevator chime made us tense. Nurses passed, a janitor's mop sloshed by. Then I heard them, those familiar footsteps. Quick, urgent, the unmistakable rhythm of Mark's leather soles on polished marble. He rounded the corner in the navy suit he'd left our house that morning, tie loosened, collar open, forehead slick with sweat. He was running, breathless, eyes locked only on Chloe. "Chloe!" His voice bounced off the walls. "Honey, are you okay? Our son. How's our son?" He dropped to his knees beside the wheelchair, seized her hands, pressed frantic kisses to her knuckles. "Damn it, I didn't hear my phone. I was in a meeting. I was terrified something happened to you." Chloe didn't pull away, but she didn't soften either. She stared at him with eyes like winter glass. Mark read her silence as shock. "It's over now, beautiful," he murmured, cupping her cheek. "Daddy's here. Everything's going to be okay." That was when I stepped out of the shadow. "Will it?" My voice carried clear and cold down the hallway. Mark's hand froze mid-caress, his shoulders locked. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he turned. The look on his face defied description. Horror, denial, pure animal panic, all at once. His skin went ashen, as though the blood had drained straight out of him. "Grace," the word choked out. He lurched to his feet, staggered. What are you doing here?" His eyes darted between us, Chloe in the chair, me standing behind her. I watched the machinery of his mind grind and seize, two separate universes colliding in one sterile corridor. "Let me introduce you properly," I said, gesturing first to Chloe. "This is Chloe, your fiancée who apparently died 5 years ago in a tragic crash." Then to myself. "And this is Grace, your obsessive, mentally unstable ex-wife." Mark retreated a step. His hands shook visibly. "You've misunderstood. I can explain." "What are you going to explain, Mark?" Chloe's voice cut through like a blade, sharp, unexpected even to me. "That your son is fighting for his life in an incubator, or that you've been playing two women for fools at the same time?" Mark's gaze flicked wildly toward the exit at the far end of the hall. The tender father vanished. The cornered animal emerged. Flight instinct took over. I need some air," he muttered, spinning on his heel. He bolted. But this time, escape would not come so easily. "Security," I shouted with everything I had. "Stop that man." Mark's shoes skidded on the tile. Two broad-shouldered guards near the elevators reacted instantly. One stepped into his path, the other clamped a hand around his upper arm. "Let me go," Mark yelled, twisting. "I didn't do anything. My wife just gave birth. I'm stressed." Mark watched his carefully polished reputation shatter under the harsh hospital lights. But I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, only cold indifference. I gripped the handles of Chloe's wheelchair and turned her away from the chaos, back toward the soft, sterile glow of the NICU. "Let's go, Chloe," I said quietly. "There's nothing more to see here. We have Leo to look after." We left Mark's desperate pleas behind us, the crackle of the guards' radios fading as we moved down the corridor. The sacred hush of the intensive care unit wrapped around us like a shield. The emptiness that settled in my chest as I watched the police escort Mark from the building hardened into something sharper by morning. I woke before dawn. The pillow beside me was empty, the house silent except for the ghostly echoes of Mark's wreckage. Tears had no place left in me. As an accountant, I understood survival. Set emotion aside, face the numbers, act ruthlessly. My first stop was the bank. The branch manager, the same man who had offered us coffee and small talk for years, averted his eyes when I walked in. I sat across from him, hands folded on the desk. "I want to see everything," I said. Joint accounts, Mark's personal accounts, credit cards, investments, all of it. He exhaled heavily, loosened his tie, and typed. The printer's whine filled the quiet room like a warning. When he slid the stack of statements toward me, nausea rose in my throat. The accounts were gutted. Savings for our future, the investment portfolio, even my 401k, emptied. But the credit card statements told the real story. Pages of online gambling sites, international wire transfers, cash advances. Mark hadn't just juggled 2 women, he had drowned in a gambling addiction. The big closings he bragged about were rare wins. The slow markets were crushing losses. Grace, the manager said, voice unsteady, there's more. Our house? My pulse hammered. He nodded. 6 months ago, Mark took out a second mortgage using a power of attorney. Payments stopped 3 months ago. Foreclosure proceedings have already started. My signature forged. My home stolen. The one place that had ever felt like safety was being ripped away. I left the bank and went straight to Mr. Davies, my lawyer. He reviewed the documents in silence, then closed the file with a soft snap. Grace, he said, this isn't just infidelity. This is professional fraud. Forgery, bank fraud, embezzlement, and the bigamous marriage to Miss Miller is a felony in its own right. My hand was steady as I signed the divorce petition. That signature was the obituary for 4 years of lies. We'll file for an immediate injunction, Mr. Davies continued. His assets will be frozen. I gave a bitter laugh. From what I've seen, there are no assets left, only debts. Late that afternoon, I returned home to find 2 men waiting on the stoop. Leather jackets, hard eyes, no suits. They stepped forward, blocking the path. "Where's Mark?" one growled. The voice matched the one I'd heard on speakerphone at the hospital. "I don't know," I said, meeting his stare, "and I'm not his keeper anymore. Whatever he owes you, ask him yourself." The man laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Oh, we will. But the bird's flown. Phone's off, office cleared out. Tell him running won't save him. We'll collect one way or another." After they left, my hands shook as I turned the key. Inside, the house felt like a crime scene. Mark's study had been ransacked, drawers yanked open, papers scattered. His passport was gone, a few suits missing. The expensive watches he loved, likely sold or pawned. He had fled. After giving a statement at the hospital, the police had released him pending charges. But Mark was never brave enough to face consequences. With loan sharks closing in, he had vanished. My phone rang. Chloe's name lit the screen. "Grace," she whispered, voice raw from crying. "The police were here. There's a warrant for Mark's arrest, but they can't find him." "I know," I said. "He ran, left us with the debts, and disappeared." Silence stretched. Then her shaky breath. "Leo, the incubator fees, the hospital bills. Mark's insurance was canceled, non-payment. The billing office just came. They're threatening to discharge us if we don't pay." This was Mark's final betrayal, abandoning his own premature son to medical debt while he ran for the border. "Don't worry," I told her. The resolve in my voice surprised even me. "I'll cover it." "How?" Chloe asked. "He cleaned you out too." "I'll find a way. I'll sell the car, the furniture, whatever it takes. That baby will come home healthy. Mark's poison won't touch him." I hung up and walked to the living room. Our wedding photo hung on the wall, Mark's lying smile frozen in time. I lifted the frame down, set it on the floor, and brought my heel down hard. Glass shattered, the image fractured into jagged pieces. Mark was gone, but I was still here. At the dealership the next day, my hand didn't tremble as I signed over the title to the red car, the one Mark had bought, saying, "It looks perfect on you," while I quietly paid the loan. I accepted far less than it was worth. The cash filled my purse like a fragile promise. When I handed the money to the hospital cashier, Chloe sat beside me in her wheelchair. In her arms, finally free from the incubator, wrapped in soft blankets, was Leo. The cashier glanced between us, then at the receipt, confusion flickering across her face. She couldn't place our connection. Sometimes we couldn't either. Outside, the air was sharp and cold, but the sun broke through. Chloe cradled Leo close, shielding him from the wind. We climbed into a taxi, not towards Lincoln Park. My perfect apartment was now a foreclosure battleground I never wanted to see again, but back to the yellow building in Pilsen. Inside Chloe's apartment, the air still carried
Leo, still so fragile from his premature arrival, demanded constant vigilance. Feeds every 2 hours around the clock, careful burping, temperature checks, the soft click of the oximeter on his tiny foot. I became a mother to a child I had never carried, waking at 3 a.m. to his faint, insistent cry. I would slip from the couch in the living room, move silently through the dim hallway so as not to disturb Chloe, and lift him from the crib. The moment his small, warm body settled against my chest, something inside me unclenched. As I warmed the bottle in the quiet kitchen, the only sounds the gentle hiss of the kettle and Leo's impatient little breaths, I looked down into his eyes. They were Mark's eyes, yes, the same shape and color, but stripped of deceit. There was only hunger, trust, and the fierce, wordless determination to live. I hated the man who had given him those eyes, yet I could feel nothing but fierce protectiveness for the child who wore them. With every feeding, every gentle rock, every time his fingers curled around mine, the hollow ache of unfulfilled motherhood inside me began, slowly, to mend. A week later, Chloe was stronger, moving more easily despite the lingering soreness of stitches and shock. One evening, as I stood at the stove stirring soup, she appeared in the doorway, holding a large black trash bag. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Cleaning house," she answered. Determination sharpened her gaze. We went together into the bedroom. We opened the closet. One by one, we pulled out every trace of Mark that still lingered in this space. The blue linen shirt from their honeymoon photo, the navy plaid slippers that matched the pair he kept in Lincoln Park, his books on real estate success, his toothbrush still standing in the holder like he might walk back in any minute. We stuffed them all into the black bag. With each item we discarded, it felt as though another chain snapped free from our shoulders. When the closet stood empty, Chloe sank to the floor. I sat beside her. The bulging bag rested between us, like a finished chapter. "He's gone," she said quietly. "The man who lied to us, who tried to turn us into enemies, he's really gone." "He's gone," I echoed, "and we're still here." Chloe leaned her head against my shoulder. For the first time, the air between us held no tension, no guarded edges. We were no longer rivals. We had become something closer to sisters, two women forged together in the same fire. "I couldn't have survived this without you, Grace," she whispered. "Leo and we would have been lost." "I would have been the one lost," I admitted, startled by the truth of it. If I'd stayed alone in that silent house with nothing but rage, I would have broken completely. Leo saved me too. The next morning, we carried the black bag to the curb. From the window, we watched the garbage truck swallow it whole. Then we turned back inside and began to reclaim the space, scrubbing every surface, throwing open windows, letting sunlight flood rooms that had felt shadowed for too long. The apartment was no longer Mark's other home. It was ours, two women and one small boy building something new. In the evenings, once Leo was asleep, we sat with mugs of tea and talked, not only about the man who had hurt us, but about everything else, childhood memories, old dreams, private fears. I learned Chloe had trained to be a teacher before Mark convinced her she didn't need to work. She discovered I could make numbers behave, could stretch a dollar, could teach her the quiet mathematics of survival. We laughed at small things, cried at others, and slowly the apartment filled with the sounds of real life again. One morning, while I changed Leo's diaper, Chloe watched me with a soft smile. "You know," she said,
He doesn't have to call you Auntie. I think Mama Grace would suit him just fine. My throat tightened. I bent and kissed Leo's tiny foot. Auntie is perfect, I told her, blinking back tears, the fiercest kind of auntie. The world outside remained difficult. Debts still loomed, lawsuits crawled forward, the future stayed uncertain. But inside those walls, fear had no foothold. Leo grew stronger every day, and with him, we grew too. We healed in small, steady increments. Chicago's bone-chilling wind finally softened. The park grass turned vivid green. Tree branches swelled with new buds. I pushed Leo's stroller along the path, sunlight warming my face for the first time in months. Chloe walked beside me, no longer pale and hunched. Color had returned to her cheeks, her posture had straightened. She poured tea from a thermos into 2 paper cups. "Should we sit for a minute?" she asked, nodding towards a shaded bench. "Leo's asleep. Don't want to wake him." We settled side by side. Leo slept deeply in the stroller, pacifier bobbing with each breath. The fragile handful from the incubator had become a sturdy, rosy-cheeked boy who smiled at strangers. Looking at him now, the old question, "Why not me?" no longer arrived. Instead, I thought, I'm so grateful he exists. He is our shared victory. As I sipped my tea, my gaze drifted across the park. Kids chasing each other, older couples on benches, the hot dog vendor calling out. Life moved on, bright and ordinary. Then a red plastic ball rolled swiftly across the grass and tapped the stroller's wheel. The carriage rocked gently. Leo didn't stir. "Oops," a breathless small voice. A girl of 5 or 6, curly hair bouncing, ran towards us, hands clasped in apology. Behind her trailed an older boy wearing glasses, looking equally contrite. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," the girl said earnestly. "Did I wake the baby?" I smiled, bent to retrieve the ball, and handed it back. He's a champion sleeper, no harm done. "Daisy, Noah," an anxious male voice called. I looked up. A tall man in his late 30s approached at a quick stride, simple t-shirt, jeans, the slightly harried look of a father accustomed to sudden chaos. He was out of breath by the time he reached us. "I'm so sorry, ladies," his hand to his chest in genuine embarrassment. I turned my head for 2 seconds and they lost the ball. "We didn't mean to disturb you." "Not at all." Ethan hesitated, one foot already turned toward the path where his children were chasing each other across the grass. Something invisible seemed to anchor him in place. He glanced back at us, then at the sky as though searching for an excuse to linger. "It's a beautiful day," he said, the words coming out almost shyly, like the start of a conversation he hadn't planned. "I love this time of year in Chicago. When the gray finally lifts, the whole city feels reborn." "Yes," I agreed, tilting my face toward the sun. "It does feel like everything gets a second chance." Ethan's smile deepened, fine lines fanned at the corners of his eyes. "Second chance. I like that." He slipped his hands into his pockets. "The kids and I come here every weekend. If they don't run off all that energy, they bounce off the walls at home." Chloe leaned forward slightly. Must be tough on their mom, chasing them around on her day off instead of resting. The smile on Ethan's face softened, but a quiet shadow passed behind his eyes. He looked down at his shoes for a second before answering. "Their mom isn't with us anymore," he said evenly. "It's been 2 years, so I'm doing my best to be both. Some days I get it right. Some days I'm just trying." The words landed gently, but they carried weight. A small silence settled between us. "I'm so sorry," Chloe said, genuine regret in her voice. "I didn't mean to—" "It's okay," Ethan replied, his tone kind, no trace of bitterness. "Life keeps moving. I have to keep moving with it, for them." His gaze shifted to me then. Our eyes met, and in that brief, unguarded moment, something wordless passed between us. The recognition of shared damage. He had buried love and learned to stand anyway. I had been betrayed and learned to stand anyway. Different wounds, same stubborn refusal to stay broken. "It must be hard," I said softly, "but you have beautiful children, and you're clearly a wonderful father." His face brightened again. This time the smile felt real, unguarded. "Thank you, Grace. That means more than you know." He pulled his phone from his pocket, checked the time. Lunchtime. These two turn into gremlins when their stomachs start growling. We should get going. He paused, then added with a small, almost hopeful lift of his brows, "If we're here next weekend and the kids accidentally terrorize you again, I apologize in advance." "Maybe we'll see you," I said, surprised by how easily the words came. Ethan gave a quick nod, called to Daisy and Noah, took their hands, and started toward the park exit. I watched them go, Daisy tugging impatiently on his arm, Noah gesturing wildly as he explained something important. Ethan listened with patient attention, head tilted toward his son. Chloe nudged me lightly with her elbow. "Whispered, he couldn't stop looking at you," she whispered, a teasing giggle in her voice. "Don't be ridiculous," I murmured, but warmth crept into my cheeks anyway. "I'm not being ridiculous. He seems kind, honest, and most importantly, no ring." I leaned back against the bench and looked up at the sky, clear blue after so many months of gray. For years, I had kept every door inside me bolted shut. Trust, hope, love, those words felt like weapons. Yet in the space of a 5-minute conversation, I felt the faintest click inside my chest, like a lock that had rusted shut, beginning very slowly to turn. Maybe the future wasn't only threat. Maybe renewal could arrive as quietly as spring after a long winter. That evening, when the house grew still and Leo's soft breathing became the only sound, Chloe and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Steam rose from our mugs of tea. Streetlights painted the windows orange. My phone lit up. A simple message from Ethan. "The kids are already asking if we'll see the nice ladies with the baby next weekend. I think I am too. Good night, Grace." A smile bloomed on my face, unforced, unguarded. Chloe noticed immediately. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "You deserve this," she said quietly. "More than anyone, you deserve to feel safe enough to open that door again." "We deserve it," I corrected, squeezing back. "Both of us." I looked out at the city lights. Months ago, in that cold doctor's office, staring at a computer screen that held the truth I never wanted, I believed my life was ending. The darkness had felt absolute, final. But darkness is never the end. It is only the season before something new breaks through the soil. If Mark's betrayal had never happened, if I had stayed blind in that comfortable, rotting life, I might never have met Chloe, never held Leo, never discovered the strength it takes to stand beside another wounded woman and choose to rebuild together. I rose and walked to the nursery. Leo slept with one tiny hand tucked under his cheek, peaceful and perfect. Like his name, he had become our brightest hope. Mark had left devastation. From the ruins, we had built something unbreakable. Life will break you, sometimes from the places you least expect. It will ruin plans, shatter certainties, leave you stumbling in pitch black. But the darkest stretch of the tunnel is always the one closest to daylight. If you are reading this and your heart is cracked open, if hope feels like a word in another language, hear me. Pain is not permanent. Broken places mend stronger. Every ending is secretly the opening line of a new beginning. My story isn't finished. Grace's story is only just beginning, and this time she writes it herself.